What's up, everybody? This is Talk MMA with talkSPORT. My name is Alex Ritchings. I'm here with Blake Harrison, Kweku, Afari. Obviously, UFC 312. We're going back to Australia this weekend. We've got a rematch between Dricus du Plessis, the champion, and Sean Strickland. We took a deep dive on all the action, so let's talk UFC 312. UFC 312 is this weekend, lads. Right, let's actually talk about the pay-per-view that's coming up. I got to interview DDP yesterday for talkSPORT. It was a great time. He's a lovely bloke. We went way over the time, obviously, because he will not ever stop giving wonderful nuggets of information about being an MMA champion.
Yeah, I think the toughest fight right now in the division is Sean Strickland for me. I think he deserves this title fight. And I have to say that because that's the guy that's in front of me. That's the only guy that's pushed me 5 rounds. So definitely Sean Strickland. And if everybody in the division had to fight and somebody had to come out on top, it would be me. And the guy that's going to fight everybody else to fight me for the top position, it would be Hamzat. And I think that's why I think he's the next contender.
Yeah, of course. I don't want to throw your focus because we're all excited about what's to come, of course, as well. So there we go. That being said, have you seen this this bromance that's kind of developed between Whittaker and Izzy? Because they both obviously faced you, both obviously lost you, bonded a little bit over the experience of fighting you and taking on your style. I don't know if you've seen that, and they're back and forth.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's amazing to see. Like I said, I would love the opportunity to one day train with both those guys. I think
amazing.
I think they are absolutely, the amount of knowledge they have and what I could learn from them, being lifelong martial artists. I'm such a big Robert Whittaker fan. I've always been, even way before I was still 19, 20 years old, I think. Yeah, around there. And I was already, when he came into the UFC, I was a big fan after The Ultimate Fighter. And I have always looked up to him, but I've always had this feeling that one day our paths will cross, and almost more of a dream, thinking of myself, imagine fighting Robert Whittaker. And yeah, I've just the utmost respect for the man as a human, as outside of the octagon and as a fighter. It was a big honor to fight him, and the same with Adesanya. As a fighter, I have the world's respect for Adesanya. What he's achieved as an all-time great of the sport, going into the Hall of Fame. That's my dream too. That's my goal too. Yeah. So, being able to beat a guy like Adesanya was the biggest moment of my career, by far. And, seeing how this sport, because that's what martial arts at the end of the day. Right now, we can't have that. I can't be buddy-buddy with a guy that I'm going to fight or along the way. It's not how, we can't train together. My mind wouldn't allow it. Cool. But the two of them in their trajectory and where they are in their careers are not going to fight again. So now they can, it's not even that. I don't think a lot of fighters genuinely hate each other. Sometimes it is there. It's just like in life. Sometimes you genuinely don't like somebody, and sometimes there's just a disagreement. But like with me and Sean, there's a respect there, especially after that first fight. We don't hate each other. It's no ill will. We just want something from the other guy. And in this case, I have his title, the title that he wants so bad. And in this case, he wants my title, which is mine, and I will defend it to death. And with Izzy and Rob now being able to share their knowledge with each other, I think it's incredible to see. And, I would love to one day have the opportunity. If Izzy decides to call it a day, I would definitely love to train with him.
All right, that full interview is up on the talkSPORT MMA channel right now if you want to watch it. Good stuff. But interesting stuff. We talked about a lot of things, but when asking him, it's difficult to ask a fighter during fight week, who's the toughest fighter in the division? It's obviously the guy they're going to fight. But he was nice enough to expand that answer, give a name drop to Hamzat Chimaev. I reminded him, which he didn't need, he's already beaten every former middleweight champion that is still in the UFC. So it's like Hamzat Chimaev really is the only challenge left for him. So it's nice that he addressed it, but I think we're all in agreement, right? Let's say Blake, that he's definitely the toughest fight in that division for the champ at the moment, right? Perhaps even beyond Sean.
Hamzat is definitely the toughest fight in the division. I've got it's a really weird one in terms of this main event for me, because I don't feel like Strickland necessarily deserves the shot, but I equally don't know who else you would have given it to within this time frame. So, yeah, it's a tricky one. But Hamzat, for sure, is the toughest fight in the division. And we heard Dana recently saying that, don't worry about Hamzat getting into America. He knows a guy, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
which, you know, is
Which
problematic
guy?
in itself. But, you know, for Hamzat and the UFC and for fight fans, maybe that is going to work out well for a middleweight title defense in the next few months, within this year, you would imagine. But yeah, Hamzat is just, we've been saying this for years now, and if it wasn't for the effects of, you know, like COVID and the other, maybe long COVID or whatever's been going on with him health-wise since then, Hamzat could have been champion a long time ago. So to see Hamzat fight for the belt is what most fans want to see, and yes, he's the toughest fight in that division.
I would agree. I think Hamzat, after what he did to Whittaker, which shocked everybody, right? It was just like, oh, geez, this guy is actually this guy. And again, we forget Hamzat, when he first broke on, when I first started paying attention, is when he beat John Phillips and he beat Reese McKee, and then it was the Gerald Mershaw one where it was just like, oh, he can strike as well. And it was how quickly he was taking those fights on, and the way that Dana White was talking about him, saying that he's one of the most talented fighters I've ever seen, one of the best fighters I've ever seen. We thought this would come a lot quicker. Obviously, it's taken a long time because of COVID and he's had his own issues, but we seem like we're finally getting to the point where Hamzat Chimaev is going to fight for the belt, and I, for one, can't wait for it. Obviously, this weekend is huge. We don't know what's going to happen. This fight, the first time, was very, very close. It could have gone either way. I agree with Blake. I don't think Sean Strickland necessarily deserves the shot, but who would you give it to in this interim period? So it makes sense. Their first fight was close. You get them in the octagon and they fight again. I expect DDP to win. I'll spoiler alert. But it's going to be good. It's going to be a good fight, and I'm glad that at the beginning of 2025 we're getting back to the pay-per-views and the fights happening again.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the UFC, it doesn't matter who fights Hamzat out of those two guys anyway, so there's no reason not to just prolong it a little bit and build the anticipation. If we talk about just the matchup, let's say DDP wins, he's the current champ. His grappling versus Hamzat's grappling. Most people will say that DDP is, as some kind of brute force striker, but the reality is he swept a whole black belt jiu-jitsu team at a quintet match, like a maniac. And we just saw what Hamzat did to Whittaker, who is a black belt, who has his own Gracie school in Australia, and he just ran through him. So, Blake, how do you see that happening? We know DDP is a strong guy. If Hamzat shoots on him, what do you think happens?
I mean, that's what I want to see, man. I don't know. I until I see someone properly stuff Hamzat's takedowns, I just don't believe it can be done.
Yeah, sure.
I need to see it with my own eyes. But if there's anyone that maybe could do it, I'm looking at DDP and I'm going, he's such a tank. And I'm just like, maybe this guy could do. That's the fight I want to. I don't really want to see Strickland Hamzat. I don't feel like there's actually much going on there. I think Hamzat will deal with him quite easily. If it went past about 7 minutes, then we could have a fight on our hands. But DDP is the fight. I just want those two to stand at the opposite sides of the octagon. You wind them up and you just let them smash into each other and just see what happens. That's what I want to see with DDP and Hamzat. I think that's the fight that has to be made if DDP wins. Let me just throw a little random question out there. If let's say Strickland won the rematch this Saturday, is there any chance that the UFC does a trilogy, or do they definitely do Hamzat next up?
I think the answer is, where's the next show? What country are we going to? That's the answer, isn't it? We've got a show in Dubai. Okay, great. Yeah, we go. We'll put, Hamzat in there. We're going back to Australia.
Yeah. I do think the location, more than anything, with this middleweight belt is everything, because it's such a international belt, right? Think about people that held the championship in recent years, and so I do think it depends on location. It depends on how the fight goes as well. If the fight is a classic and there's a yearning for us to see it again, then there's no reason why we can't wait a little bit longer to see Hamzat fight for the belt. But I do think the UFC's intention is to get that belt around the waist of Hamzat Chimaev ASAP. But Strickland will have something to say about that, because when the interview he did with DDP, he was very, I don't know, he was very, very nice about Sean Strickland.
Yeah.
In terms of, he gave me my toughest fight in the UFC. He's fought 8 times in the UFC. He's got 6 stoppages. Only 2 of his fights went to decision. I think it's the was it the Tavares fight went to decision?
Yeah.
And Strickland's fight went to decision. So Strickland's been one of his toughest opponents in the octagon. So let's see how this fight goes. There's no given, but I expect DDP to win this fight, and I expect DDP to face off against Hamzat Chimaev in a fight that I think most fans are clamoring for. And if you hear former champions, people who fought against DDP, talk about him after the fight, they almost seem bewildered, bemused. I interviewed Robert Whittaker, and he was like, yeah, I thought that I was out of range, and then all of a sudden he was there. You hear Izzy talk in a similar way about him. So I think it's an interesting one, the way the DB's developed and progressed. And I feel like now fans get behind them.
Yeah, and I think that's fueled, DDP his entire career, because just talking to him about, I asked him about when you're 18, you win the kickboxing world championships. Like, how did you feel as your position as a martial artist? We asked that question. And he said, like, everyone told me that you're not going to win. Like, you'll just go there, you'll compete, you'll get some good experience. But South Africa, we've never won. We're not going to win. And that made him want to win even more. So it's like this exactly the same thing that's pushed him throughout his entire career, where everyone's like, your striking's not good enough. Your fundamentals aren't good enough. You're not going to be able to outstrike whoever. And he goes out there and does it. So he gets it behind him, and because he's so much of a will in his fight, isn't he? He summons his will and imposes it on you more than perhaps we see most people do. And that is all about having the right mentality going in and knowing what you're fighting for and what you're trying to achieve. I do agree with you that the UFC would be happy to wrap a belt around Hamzat, but not until he can fight in the United States, because otherwise you do not want to put a champion, wrap him up if he can't even fight in your country. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But touching on that bromance that you mentioned there, Kweku Blake, I don't know if you saw Izzy and Rob going backwards and forwards with a bit of banter talking about fighting DDP. Oh, I'll ask you a question, because what did you think, mate? What did you think?
I did see it. Thank you, Alex. Yes, next question.
They're not being they're not patronizing DDP.
Well, do you know what? I didn't see the specific chat about DDP. I did see the bromance between them, which I loved. I mean, and it felt really genuine as well, which I was a big fan of. The fact that, you see rivalries happen in the UFC and then people come together, and there's always something about it. Like when I look at Bisping and Rockhold having fun together, I think there's something still there. You still want to hit each other a little bit,
that's
don't
just
you?
Bisping, though, isn't it? And maybe a bit of Rockhold as well, but
Rockhold, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but when it comes to Rob and Izzy, I'm like, I genuinely think you two like each other. I genuinely think you two could they could do a little podcast together or something, and I think people would want to listen. They would enjoy each other's company, and it warms my heart. But in terms of, I didn't see the specific stuff about DDP.
Yeah, no, it's all good. They were basically just saying, like, I thought he was a lot slower, and then all of a sudden I'm getting knocked out. So they were laughing at themselves, which is quite nice about it as well. And also that they're very close in terms of the countries. I know it's not the same country, but like that probably helps the bromance as well. Like there's an ex-Scottish UFC fighter, I'm sure we'll laugh about how we both got knocked out by the South African, right? So all right. That being said, right. What else have we got to talk about here? I don't think we've got much. I think we can wrap this up. Yeah, I think we're good. All right. Well, guys, UFC 312 is going to be a stacked pay-per-view. Any shout outs for like sneaky fights you guys have got your eyes on this card as well?
I mean, if I'm honest, I would say that when we look back on the year of 2025, I wouldn't be surprised if this is seen as the worst pay-per-view of the year. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Save that for the end of the podcast,
Yeah. I mean, look, the main event could be a great fight. It has the possibility to be a really great fight. I'm really interested in the co-main event. I think Tatiana Suarez, I mean, is she the Hamzat Chimaev of strawweight? Dominates people with her grappling, gets injured and has health issues, undefeated. She is someone that you go, she should have been a champ a long time ago, in my opinion. She's a very, very phenomenal kind of...
I'm like freeze-framed here. I'm trying to throw in 10 years ago, mate, she won the Ultimate Fighter. Sorry to throw that in, but it was 10 years ago she won the Ultimate Fighter, and we thought she was going to be a champion then.
Yeah, she's fought like 6 times in the last 8 years, 9 years, whatever it's been. It's, she has had some really bad luck, some really bad health issues. That not her fault, all that stuff. But she's a dominant grappler. She's got real skills, but she's had 18 months out the cage since her last fight, and she's going up against arguably the pound for pound best female fighter on the planet at the moment. In Zhang Weili. It's going to be a real tough ask for Suarez, but I'm really interested to see if Zhang can stop Suarez's takedowns? Because we all know what she's going to try and do. Can you stop it, though? Because she is so athletic, so strong, and so good at what she does.
I think we all had Zhang Weili ending the year as champion of that division. And I feel, did you know?
No, I said Suarez.
I think I would have said Suarez as well.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I had Zhang Weili. I think she wins this weekend.
She very well might do. Yeah.
I feel like if you look at her, you talked about inactivity when it comes to Tatiana. Zhang Weili's only fought once in 2023, once in 2024. Got her fighting early in 2025. So I want to see her in the octagon 2 or 3 times defending that belt. Because like you said, I think she's one of the most talented female fighters we have. That's one of the most talented fighters in the UFC. So I want to see her more active and fighting more regularly. And I think that starts this weekend. I think that starts with a win, a dominant win this weekend as well.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to me, just to add on that like Rose Namajunas beat this girl twice and she's just left the weight class. And it's like, Rose, you could just come back, you know? Like, she hasn't got anyone else to fight right now, but we'll see how Tatiana gets on. I'm very excited for it. It's going to tell us a lot about both girls, I think, how good Weili is and also how good Suarez potentially is as well. Apart from that, a lot of Australians on the card, obviously, some top talent coming through. Wang Kong is back. A lot of people are looking forward to that one as well. Tom Nolan, how are we feeling really quickly? Let me ask you about Tafa Teixeira being like the Coco main event. 3rd fight up on the main card. This is Teixeira's UFC debut, and he is below a championship fight.
I mean, it's just one of those. This is for the local fans cards, and it's everyone in the stadium. You get behind your local Aussie fighter or whatever it is, and that's who you're supporting, and hopefully everyone has a good time. But for the rest of the world watching at home, we're kind of main and co-main, and the rest of it, we could probably take it or leave it, unless we find out afterwards that there was some insane knockout or something like that. That's the reality of it for fight fans. Is you'll watch it, you might fast forward a bit of it, and then you go, oh, there was a sick knockout. Let me go and watch that. Oh, who's that guy? And then you'll watch the co-main and the main. Yeah.
Well, Tafa Teixeira is going to be, it's a heavyweight fight, so it's probably going to be an insane knockout. So it makes sense if you haven't got other big names on the card to make that the co-main event, hope for fireworks in the octagon. But like Blake said, it's all about the main event and the co-main as well.
All right, fantastic. Well, guys, hope you enjoyed this episode of Talk MMA today here on the talkSPORT channel. Thank you very much to Kweku and Blake as well for joining us today. We'll be back before the next pay-per-view, obviously, to have a little chat. Stay tuned to catch some interviews with Adam Catterall here on the talkSPORT MMA channel as well, with plenty of the fighters from UFC 312. But until then, guys, thank you very much. And we will see you next time. Thank you.